Hey everyone, if you've ever found yourself wondering what's really under the hood of all these incredible AI tools popping up everywhere, well, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on transformers. This is the groundbreaking tech that's literally the engine driving this entire AI revolution. So, let's get into it. And this quote right here from one of the actual creators of the Transformer just nails it. It all kicked off with this one research paper in 2017 called "Attention is All You Need." And trust me, it wasn't just another paper, it was a seismic shift. It completely changed the game for what AI could do.
All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get a handle on what a transformer even is. Then, we'll look at the old models and why they just weren't cutting it. After that, we'll dive into the transformer's basic design, uncover its secret weapon, something called self-attention. And finally, we'll see how this blueprint became a reality and completely reshaped the world of AI. Sound good?
Okay, let's start with the big question. Section 1, the AI Revolution's engine. What is a transformer, really?
So at its core, a transformer model is a type of AI that learns how to understand and even generate text that feels human. And how does it do that? Well, by chewing through massive, and I mean massive amounts of text data, learning all the patterns, the context, and the subtle relationships between words.
And this is why you should care. This isn't just some abstract concept from a lab. Transformers are the engine behind the tools you're probably already using. We're talking about ChatGPT, Google's BERT that powers its search, even in complex gaming AI like DeepMind's AlphaStar. They all have this same DNA.
All right, so to really get why transformers were such a huge deal, we first need to understand the problem they solved. You see, before they came along, AI researchers were, well, they were kind of stuck. They'd hit a wall. Let's talk about why. Back in the day, the go-to models for language were something called recurrent neural networks, or RNNs. And on the surface, they made sense. They were designed to process data in order, sequentially, just like we read a sentence. But they had some really serious limitations. So, what was the big deal? Why were they such a bottleneck? Well, it really boils down to two major problems that were holding the entire field back.
Here are the two big weaknesses of those old RNNs. First, they had to process words one by one, super slow, and it meant they couldn't really use the power of modern computer chips like GPUs. The second problem? Information loss. If you gave it a really long sentence, by the time it got to the end, it would pretty much forget what was said at the beginning. It had a terrible memory. Now look at how transformers just blew past these problems. They process all the words at once, in parallel. That makes them way faster. And that attention mechanism, that's the solution to the memory problem. It lets the model see the relationship between all the words in a sentence, no matter how far apart they are.
Okay, so we know transformers are faster and have a much better memory for context. But how? What does the blueprint for one of these things actually look like? Let's dive into the basic architecture.
The easiest way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like a black box for, say, language translation. That's the example the original paper used. You stick a sentence in one end, and out comes the perfectly translated sentence from the other. But the real magic, of course, is what's happening inside that box. And it's basically a two-part system. First, you have the encoder. Its job is to read the sentence you gave it and, well, understand it. It creates this rich numerical representation of the sentence's meaning and context. Then you have the decoder. It takes that understanding from the encoder and uses it to write the new sentence, one word at a time. So pretty simple, right? The encoder reads and the decoder writes. But here's the absolute key takeaway. The whole process for both the encoder and the decoder is built on this mathematical trick called attention. It's not doing that one word at a time thing like the old RNNs. This is a totally different approach.
All right, now we're getting to the heart of it all. This is the real secret sauce behind the Transformers' power. Let's break down exactly how this thing called self-attention actually works.
So self-attention is basically how the model figures out context. As it looks at each word, it's also looking at every other word in the sentence to figure out how they all relate. This is how it can understand a sentence like, "The cat chased the mouse because it was fast." Self-attention lets it figure out that it refers to the mouse, not the cat. That's a huge leap in understanding.
Okay, so how does it do that? This is where it gets a little technical, but stick with me. For every single word, the model generates 3 different things called vectors, which are really just lists of numbers. These are the query, the key, and the value. You can think of them as 3 different hats a word can wear.
Let's make this super simple. The query vector? That's like the current word asking a question out loud. Hey, who in this sentence is important to me? The key vectors for all the other words are like labels on their shirts, saying, this is who I am and what I'm about. And finally, the value vector holds the word's actual substantial meaning, the good stuff.
So here's how it all comes together. The model takes that question from one word's query and compares it to the label on every other word's key. This comparison creates a relevance score. A high score means a strong connection. The model then uses these scores to turn up the volume on the meaning, the value, of the most relevant words. It literally learns where to focus its attention.
But wait, there's more. You'll often hear this whole thing called multi-head attention. So, what's that multi-head part all about?
This is actually a pretty brilliant trick to make the model even more powerful. Instead of doing this whole attention calculation just once, it runs the process multiple times, all at the same time, in what they call different heads. Each head can learn a totally different kind of relationship. Maybe one head gets really good at understanding how verbs and subjects connect, while another focuses on what pronouns are referring to. It gives the model this really deep, multi-layered understanding of the text. It's like looking at the sentence from 8 different angles at once.
Okay, we've been deep in the weeds of the architecture. Let's zoom back out now and look at the real-world shockwave this Bluepoint created.
And the pace of this change was just mind-blowing. The Attention is All You Need paper drops in 2017. Literally 1 year later, Google releases BERT, and it completely revolutionizes how search engines understand what we're asking. Then, by 2020, OpenAI unleashes GPT-3, showing the entire world the insane creative potential of these models. Suddenly, AI could write poetry, generate code, the floodgates were open.
The impact was so massive that it basically created a whole new category in the field of AI. Scholars at Stanford started calling them foundation models. And the name is perfect, because these huge, powerful transformer models are now the foundation for thousands of other applications. They literally reshaped the entire landscape.
So when you boil it all down, transformers solved one of the most stubborn problems in AI, understanding context across long distances. And cracking that problem is what unlocked the generative AI we see everywhere today. Which leaves us with a pretty exciting question, right? What other huge, seemingly impossible problems will this amazing architecture help us solve next?